And so here I am talking to you, and I hope I will make you as enthusiastic as I am about Harry Potter. Not that it's really my daily occupation. I am an active member of the Belgian Theosophical Society for some 20 plus years now. I also have some activity at the level of the European Theosophical Federation. I travel around a bit in the world, sometimes visiting certain theosophical meetings. So I'm theosophically speaking quite involved. And where you see me now, we are again in the headquarters of the Belgian Theosophical Society in Brussels. And maybe you would want to know my name. My name is Sabine Van Osta. So I'm dying to return to the theme of this talk, Harry Potter and the seals of protection. And as I gave in my introduction, the suggestion that people preferably have read all the 7 novels. And probably a bit disrespectfully, I added to it. And by the way, the movies are no good. I must admit, maybe that was a bit harsh on my behalf. Not that I feel the need to apologize for it, but because there are certain scenes that really turned out very, very well. But unfortunately, as it goes with movies, and specifically these ones that were prepared quite quickly after the publishing of the novels, so they all had to be produced in an incredible pace. And unfortunately, they left out a lot of good things that were in the books, and they put in a lot of commercially easier selling trash, which makes that, well, in average, the movies are a bit more superficial than the books are. The books, by the way, they are very deep. They give us the story of a very young guy, actually a child when we start in the first book, The Philosopher's Stone, young guy by the name of Harry Potter. And we have, you might not say it from the very first novel, but we have in front of us a Messianic story. And a Messianic story means that it is a story about an individual who is specifically picked out, who is specifically prepared to save, and probably save a whole population, to save the world, to save whatever it is that you want to define it, but who is there to make things better and to mend. And that's exactly what the story of Harry Potter is about. And so the messianic element of the novels implies a huge deal of protection, and we will see how far it gets with that protection. And at the same time, it is actually based upon one big principle, but it layers so much over different elements, not only the spells, not only the wand, not only the fantastic beasts, of which I will have very few to tell, not to overload our lecture of today, but we will see. The novels were published over a span of 10 years, from 1997 to 2007, and the movies followed quite quickly afterwards, between 2001 and 2011. The last book, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, it was for the movies split in 2. There I don't really understand the choice, but anyway, that's the way it is. And so the whole series of the novels, they finally get into the finale, the Deathly Hallows. They start revolving around the Deathly Hallows, meaning those 3 basic elements: the wand, the invisibility cloak, and the Philosopher's Stone. Those are ultimately the what I would call the elements of the white kind of protection, because we're talking about protection. The Deathly Hallows are the symbols of the white kind of protection versus what we will learn to see, the dark kind of protection, which are, of course, the Horcruxes. We will definitely come back to that. And from the Horcruxes, there will be, as we learn, 7 of them in total. So what I would like to do is go through the novels one by one, pick certain scenes, and we will, of course, read into the novels, not all of it, just here and there a scene, and then see where we get in terms of protections and seals of protection. First novel was The Philosopher's Stone, a few typical images, of course, the friendship of the 3 friends, Ron, Hermione, and Harry. And as it goes, this book sets the scene, and we already get quite a number of materials that we will find back further on. That's why they are so nicely glued together, these 7 novels. We get the image of the boy who lived. We get the image of the scar. Harry, completely unknown, he's only 11 years old. He has lived there in that cupboard under the stairs with his Aunt Petunia, the sister of his mother. They just told him one or other cock and bull story that his parents died in an accident, which was not true. He gets to discover his real origin and the fact that he's a wizard. It's Hagrid the gamekeeper who goes to get him in his huge motorbike, and he goes and collects Harry because he has reached the age to go to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. And so we get to see that Harry is installed like any other wizard who starts his education at that school. He will be equipped with a number of things he will need in that school. Obviously, he will go for the wand. He will buy himself an owl. He will buy himself a broomstick. And he's off for school. Now, the scene of the buying of the wand is a very special one. Of course, the wand is already a kind of a protection. It's a weapon, if you like, not to taken into a negative way. But he goes to the shop of Ollivander, and there he buys his wand. The business of the wand is about not him picking out a wand, but the wand picking out him. We see that. Harry has chosen a number of wands already. One tore a number of drawers out of the cupboard of Mr. Ollivander. Another one blasted a few bulbs, so it was clearly not the right one. And finally, he gets another wand given to him by Mr. Ollivander to try, and we read that particular scene. Tricky customer, huh? Not to worry. We'll find the perfect match here somewhere. I wonder now. Yes. Why not? Unusual combination. Holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple. Harry took the wand. He felt a sudden warmth in his fingers. He raised the wand above his head, brought it swishing down through the dusty air, and a stream of red and gold sparks shot from the end like a firework, throwing dancing spots of light onto the walls. Hagrid whooped and clapped, and Mr. Ollivander cried, "Oh, bravo! Yes, indeed! Oh, very good! Well, 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 how curious! How very curious!" He put Harry's wand back into its box and wrapped it in brown paper, still muttering, "Curious, curious." "Sorry," said Harry, "but what's curious?" Mr. Ollivander fixed Harry with his pale stare. "I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. Every single wand. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather is in your wand gave another feather. Just one other. It is very curious indeed that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar." Harry swallowed. "Yes, 13.5 inches. Curious indeed how these things can happen. The wand chooses the wizard, remember. I think we must expect great things from you, Mr. Potter. After all, he who must not be named did great things. Terrible, yes, but great." And there you have it. There you have it. Harry entered, as I said, into that new world, that completely unknown world, and he has to see that apparently everybody in that world knows him, or from hearsay. He's the boy who lived. He discovers he's already a celebrity, and not only that, but apparently some have even very important expectations about what he will mean for the wizarding world. We must expect great things from you. And despite that, because it could be very easy, a little child that is Harry, to start a trip in arrogance or whatever in all that follows in all the novels. But actually, what happens is that Harry just will remain Harry throughout, with all his trouble, with all his difficulties, whatever. He's just an adolescent as every other, but yes, he cannot help it. For a number of reasons, he is also the chosen one, and he's willing, even in his own modest way, to live up to that expectation and that promise. We will see that also later on when he becomes, as we could call it, a true disciple of Professor Dumbledore. But we're not there yet. Dumbledore, of course, he has him in the school of Hogwarts, and he will see to his education. And as we go along, that education will be more and more accelerated, because at some point in time, we will see that in the Half-Blood Prince. Time's up for Dumbledore, and he still wants to give Harry the most of the information that he will need for the final battle. But let's not go too quickly here. The theme of the wand will be very important. As I already mentioned, there will be a wand as one of the 3 Deathly Hallows. So we will definitely see that coming back. And the theme of the scar is also quite important, as we will see. It is a physical proof of the real seal of protection which was laid upon him by the mother's love, one of the seals of protection that I think we can easily discern in these novels. That's one way of looking at them, but that scar is also the proof of a much deeper connection with Voldemort, as we will learn also in the last novel. Other important elements is the first encounter with Voldemort, who is, by the way, completely disembodied, as we are now in this first novel, is very much weakened, unrecognizably weakened by the fact that he tried to kill Harry Potter and that the killing curse rebounded upon him. So he's a bit on the move and hiding, but for the first time, he tries to possess one of the professors of Hogwarts, Professor Quirrell, not by accident, the professor for the subject of defense against the dark arts. And there in the finale of this book, The Philosopher's Stone, there will of course be some kind of encounter between Harry and Voldemort in the person of Quirrell. And we immediately find the first sets of the battle between the two. But the point is, Quirrell, meaning Voldemort, could not touch Harry. Harry was out of bounds for him. He could try, but he could not really touch. And in a conversation with Dumbledore, right in the Philosopher's Stone, Harry wishes to ask that aspect to Dumbledore. And he says, "But why couldn't Quirrell touch me?" And then Dumbledore replies, "Your mother died to save you. If there's one thing Voldemort cannot understand, it is love. He didn't realize that love as powerful as your mother's for you leaves its own mark, not a scar, no visible sign. To have been loved so deeply, even though the person who loved us is gone, will give us some protection forever. It is in your very skin. Quirrell, full of hatred, greed and ambition, sharing his soul with Voldemort, could not touch you for this reason. It was agony to touch a person marked by something so good." And we can, of course, read here something so good as something so pure, something so genuine, something so true, or something so unconditional. You can qualify that love whatever way you want, but Harry has become, because of it, untouchable. So we quickly go now to the second book, The Chamber of Secrets. And here we get to know the world of elves, obviously quite important. It's a world, it's a lecture on its own, if you wish. But we also encounter other things like the diary of Tom Riddle. And through that diary, we also get to know some of the past of Lord Voldemort. The very first elements, it will be further developed in the later novels, but this is the first time that we get to know the young Voldemort, who is actually named Tom Marvolo Riddle. A name which then later on will be remixed and will make I Am Lord Voldemort. Again, quite in contrast to the way we see Harry develop, because Harry will always be Harry. There is no need for him to conjure for him another persona, an entire personality trip, a new name, a new this, a new that, or a search for immortality. Harry just remains Harry. That's who he is. We see about this diary, he just discovers in one of the big catacombs of Hogwarts Castle And there he will have again an encounter on basis of the diary, which Ginny Weasley discovered, by the way, Ron Weasley's sister. And there he will have a great battle with a basilisk. And then, of course, in the end, Tom Riddle, who sorts out of the diary, because as we will learn, it is actually a Horcrux. And in that encounter, we get a very interesting conversation between Tom Riddle and between Harry. And it goes as follows. And Harry speaks. "No one knows why you lost your powers when you attacked me," said Harry abruptly. "I don't know myself, but I know why you couldn't kill me. Because my mother died to save me. My common Muggle-born mother," he added, shaking with suppressed rage. "She stopped you killing me, and I've seen the real you. I saw you last year. You're a wreck. You're barely alive. That's where all your power got you. You're in hiding. You're ugly. You're foul." Riddle's face contorted. Then he forced it into an awful smile. "So, your mother died to save you. Yes, that's a powerful counter-charm. I can see now. There's nothing special about you, after all. I wondered, you see, because there are strange likenesses between us, Harry Potter. Even you must have noticed. Both half-bloods, orphans, raised by muggles. Probably the only two parcel mouths to come to Hogwarts since the great Slytherin himself. We even look something alike. But after all, it was merely a lucky chance that saved you from me. That's all I wanted to know." And of course, this is end of quote. We see immediately, indeed, Tom Riddle's problem that he seriously underestimates the protection of Harry, specifically the role and the importance of love and other so-called soft qualities that do have their importance in the totality of life and in the totality also, if you want, from the battle that we are discussing, the huge battle between Harry Potter and Voldemort. And so, of course, as Harry puts it, my common Muggle-born mother, his mother was not really from a wizarding family. She just came from an ordinary Muggle family, and many of in the wizarding world, specifically people belonging to the House of Slytherin, they have a bit of a look upon these people and they think they are of lesser importance, which is of course not the case. In this particular novel, Voldemort will profile himself as the heir of Slytherin. We see again an enormous ego trip into arrogance without any limitation, really. And he's so thick with himself that he cannot see in what way that others and the small thing others do for you can be important. But he's also aware that there are likenesses between Harry and himself. As he says, both half-bloods, orphans, raised by muggles, and the Parselmouth. We will get to know why that is. We will get to know that. We will see that later on. Third year at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. The Prisoner of Azkaban. Again, the wizarding world opens up further and further for Harry, and he discovers that after all, there is some sort of family member in his life, and there's a family member still alive in the person of Sirius Black, his godfather. There's only one problem. Sirius Black is a so-called convicted murderer. We will learn later on that Sirius Black is falsely accused, but Sirius Black is in the wizard's prison by the name of Azkaban. In this novel, we also learn about Dementors, which are presented to us as the guards of Azkaban prison, sort of very ugly, black, hooded creatures who actually take away, as it is described, they take away all the happiness, all the warmth of heart, and they can even perform the kiss of death, which is to say, they can suck up someone's soul. That's the way it is presented. You could, of course, imagine a lot of ways of presenting the losing of a soul or the going lost of a soul in other systems of presentation. We also get to know the friends of Sirius Black by the names of, and it's their nicknames that they use, but it's a very important thematic: Moony, Wormtail, Petfoot, and Prongs. And they are respectively Professor Lupin, Moony, Professor Lupin, who is, unfortunately, he was bitten by a werewolf when he was young, and so he transforms into a werewolf. Very annoying when it's full moon. And then Wormtail, Peter Pettigrew is his real name. Petfoot was Sirius Black, and Prongs, James Potter. We learn about the mentors. We learn about these four friends who are animagi. It means that they are capable of changing into the form of an animal. 3 of them have become animagus. Peter Pettigrew, who changed into a rat. Sirius Black, who changed into a big black dog. And Prongs, who changed into a stag. And that's also their patronuses. We learn indeed about the patronus, which is the antidote to a Dementor. So when you're attacked by a Dementor, you cast the spell of the patronus and you can cast away the Dementor like that. And with that, all the negative energy and influence that a Dementor brings with it. And we will see in this novel also the reunion of the 4 friends and also the setting right of certain accounts, because of course Sirius has been unjustly incarcerated in Azkaban, and that we will see will put itself right. And then at some decisive moment, when the 3 friends, Lupin, Sirius Black, and Snape, I believe it is, are there in the shack next to the Whomping Willow. They are there with their wands on the ready to blow at Peter Pettigrew, who is still in the form of a rat, but he will soon transform into his real human form. And at that moment, they want to kill him. Lupin and Sirius Black want to kill him. But Harry says no. Harry saves the life of Peter Pettigrew. And later on, he will start doubting that decision. He's thinking, did I do the right thing? And of course, again in a conversation, in the Prisoner of Azkaban, in a conversation with Dumbledore, he discusses this thing, and then this is what Dumbledore has to say about it. And I think it is very important also to understand the mechanics of protection. Pettigrew, says Dumbledore, owes his life to you. You have sent Voldemort a deputy who is in your debt. When one wizard saves another wizard's life, it creates a certain bond between them. And I'm much mistaken if Voldemort wants his servant in the debt of Harry Potter. I don't want a bond with Pettigrew, said Harry. He betrayed my parents. This is magic at its deepest, its most impenetrable, Harry. But trust me, the time may come when you will be very glad you saved Pettigrew's life. Harry couldn't imagine when that would be. Dumbledore looked as though he knew what Harry was thinking. I knew your father very well, both at Hogwarts and later, Harry, he said gently. He would have saved Pettigrew too, I'm sure of it. Harry looked up at him. Dumbledore wouldn't laugh. He could tell Dumbledore. End of quote. We see, of course, here another seal of protection, multiple seals of protection in play here, in just this small quote, but of course the whole novel is full of it. On the one side, the fact that Harry saved another wizard's life, and that it creates a certain debt, which at some point in time he might be able to draw upon, which will be done, by the way, again in the last novel, because there in the last novel a lot of lines, thematic lines, come together. And then as another example of protection, we see again the care of Dumbledore for Harry, and the fact that he exactly knows what he needs to say to Harry to comfort Harry in his doubts. It is as if he looks through Harry and he knows he's also a bit thinking of his father and all. Harry adores his father, of course. He doesn't know much of him. In the first novel, he has seen his parents in what they call the mirror of Erased. When he stands for the mirror, you see your deepest heart's wishes, and Harry saw both of his parents next to him. And of course, this gave him a very fine and loving feeling, some element that we will see also later on. Now, in The Prisoner of Azkaban, as I said, we will also talk about, there is also the theme of the Patronuses, and Harry, at some point in time, fully attacked by Dementors somewhere on the grounds of Hogwarts, and he's there. He just found out that he has a godfather, but that godfather is also heavily attacked, and the Dementor is about to perform the kiss of death on that godfather, and Harry is, of course, completely desperate. And at some point in time, he sees a Patronus coming from somewhere, a stag, a beautiful stag of light, and it comes to chase away all the Dementors. And of course, until the very end, there is a bit of doubt. And at first, Harry believes that it is his father who casts the Patronus, but actually it is Harry himself who does it. And so, again, we read in the novel, and Harry is speaking. Last night, I thought it was my dad who'd conjured my Patronus. I mean, when I saw myself across the lake, I thought I was seeing him. An easy mistake to make, said Dumbledore softly. I expect you're tired of hearing it, but you do look extraordinary like James. Except for your eyes. You have your mother's eyes. Harry shook his head. It was stupid. Thinking it was him, he muttered. I knew he was dead. You think the dead we have loved ever truly leave us? You think that we don't recall them more clearly than ever in times of great trouble? Your father is alive in you, Harry, and shows himself most plainly when you have need of him. How else could you produce that particular Patronus? Prongs rode again last night. It took a moment before Harry to realize what Dumbledore had said. And then Dumbledore continues. Sirius told me all about how they became animagi last night, said Dumbledore, smiling. An extraordinary achievement, not least keeping it quiet from me. And then I remembered the most unusual form your Patronus took when it charged Mr. Malfoy down at your Quidditch match against Ravenclaw. So you did see your father last night, Harry. You found him inside yourself. Now that's end of quote, quite particular. We saw what Harry had inside of himself, or, for example, the parallels that he had with Voldemort and certain things apparently that were in him. But this is something that is in Harry too, that indescribable pure love for his parents, and therefore in a certain way also from his parents, up to the point where his Patronus takes exactly the shape of the animagus that his father took to come to the aid of his friend Moony, namely Professor Lupin. A very beautiful symbolism here is worked out, and it will not be the last bit of it that we see, but we should continue. We're only at the fourth novel, The Goblet of Fire. The wizarding world is opened up even more. We are the witnesses of the big international Quidditch championship. We are the witnesses of a huge international contest which is organized at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. We see Harry being quite and completely against the rules, being elected to also compete together with 3 champions. And it's all a setup in order to get Harry at the point where he needs to be in the final scene for the resurrection of Lord Voldemort. We also get here with more detail the theme of 2 groups of people in the wizarding world, the Aurors being, let's say, the policing squad of the Ministry of Magic, versus the Death Eaters, who are the cronies of Lord Voldemort. Of course, they symbolize, again, in another way, also the huge strife, the battle between darkness and light. We also see here the defense against the dark arts teacher. They took a bit of a more stable and a more experienced guy this time, under the name of Mad-Eye Moody, an ex-Auror. He will not be that long in operation because he will be overpowered by a crony of Lord Voldemort, and he will be stuck somewhere in a basement of some kind, and his replacement will take up the shape of Mad-Eye Moody through Polyjuice potion. Another important element that we will also find in the grand finale of the Deathly Hallows is the pensieve. A very important thing, of course. Now, I want to draw the attention to one of the final scenes of the Goblet of Fire, the final task, the third task, the cup which they had to reach through the maze happens to be a port key. It means when you touch it, you are transported immediately to some other place. What other place? Well, Harry, together with Cedric, the boy you see on the image, they are both transported to a graveyard. And there, on that graveyard, Lord Voldemort will be resurrected. Once he has the new body, Voldemort gives a speech. He has called for the Death Eaters. They come all around him, and then he starts a speech. Harry there is completely immobilized. He couldn't do a thing from the moment Cedric is murdered. Harry is immobilized. Voldemort resurrected with the help of Wormtail, Peter Pettigrew, because that's where Pettigrew went. And then in that scene, we see the following. And Voldemort is speaking. You know, of course, that they have called this boy my downfall. Voldemort said softly, his red eyes upon Harry, whose scar began to burn so fiercely that he almost screamed in agony. You all know that on the night I lost my powers and my body, I tried to kill him. His mother died in the attempt to save him, and unwittingly provided him with a protection I admit I had not foreseen. I could not touch the boy. Voldemort raised one of his long white fingers and put it very close to Harry's cheek. His mother left upon him the traces of her sacrifice. This is old magic. I should have remembered it. It was foolish to overlook it. But no matter. I can touch him now. Harry felt the cold tip of the long white finger touch him, and thought his head would burst with the pain. Voldemort laughed softly in his ear, then took the finger away and continued addressing the Death Eaters. I miscalculated, my friends, I admit. My curse was deflected by the woman's foolish sacrifice, and it rebounded upon me. Ah, pain beyond pain, my friends. Nothing could have prepared me for it. I was ripped from my body. I was less than spirit, less than the meanest ghost. But still, I was alive. What I was, even I do not know. I, who have gone further than anybody along the path that leads to immortality. You know my goal, to conquer death. And now I was tested, and it appeared that one or more of my experiments had worked. For I had not been killed, though the curse should have done it. Nevertheless, I was as powerless as the weakest creature alive, and without the means to help myself, for I had no body, and every spell with which might have helped me, required the use of a wand. This is a very interesting portion and a quote indeed, because here we have Voldemort, not with as many words, of course, but once that Dumbledore learns about this, he immediately knows that there must not be just one Horcrux, but several of them, and that because of those Horcruxes, Indeed, Voldemort did not die. But again, Voldemort has a serious blind angle. A serious blind angle because he continues to talk about the woman's foolish sacrifice. It is really a system, an economy, the economy of love that he does not understand, and he does not want it to enter into his system, which is based upon, as he says it, to conquer death. He wants immortality, and he wants to get there by any means. He would sacrifice everything else except him. That the rest of them die for his immortality, that's not his problem. As long as he gains immortality. No need to say that the system that Harry functions in is the complete opposite one, because Harry's story is a story of the full and the pure self-sacrifice. As the novels go on, of course, these themes become developed ever so more densely, so we continue with the next one, The Order of the Phoenix. Very interesting book indeed. Harry and his friends, Hermione and Ron, they were always the three of them, but now we will see some others joining them and really forming like a nucleus. Well, you could say a nucleus of brotherhood. They stand for each other, they fight together, they prepare themselves together, because in the end, what they receive now and as lessons in defense of the dark arts, it's really nothing. Why? Because actually the Ministry of Magic has made the first step into getting control over the school, and they want to cast aside Dumbledore, more or less a difficult thing to do, of course, because Dumbledore is indeed a very great wizard, but they try nevertheless. This is also the book where Harry gets to know more about Sirius Black and the famous House of Black, and where he sees how he is further connected to the wizarding world. Very importantly, this will also be the book where we will learn about the art of occlumency and legilimency, namely the art of reading someone else's thoughts and mind. Very interesting. Why? It is another of those occasions where Dumbledore has to accelerate Harry's education, because of course he suspects, and Harry suspects as much as does Dumbledore, that there is indeed an open connection between Harry and the Dark Lord. And of course, that door needs to be kept shut. And in order to learn Harry how to do it, he must learn occlumency, except he has to learn it from the one professor that he loathes most, and on whom he is most mistaken, by the way, namely Professor Snape. Now, of course, there is again a great battle in the Ministry of Magic. Harry and his friends have gone there unnecessarily because of the mental link between Lord Voldemort and Harry. Harry has got the idea that Sirius is in danger, and he's in danger in the Ministry of Magic. So the friends, Harry and friends, they call themselves Dumbledore's army. They go straight to the Ministry of Magic, a very hazardous operation, of course, but nevertheless, they are young, they are impulsive, they have the energy and they have the drive, so they all go on their broomsticks straight through to the Ministry of Magic. Dumbledore ultimately comes after them in one of the battles that deploys in the Ministry of Magic. Unfortunately, Sirius is killed. Sirius had to go after Harry as well, because they were under attack of the Death Eaters, all the young ones, and obviously they had done a fine job in the Room of Requirement with doing exercises on all sorts of interesting spells when it comes to defense of the dark arts, except they are still no match for a whole squad of Death Eaters. So Dumbledore comes to their aid. Sirius and Lupin, they all come to their aid, and there's a lot of battle going on. Of course, it's a very juicy piece for the movie makers, because they could make some very nice movies, and I explicitly took a few pictures of that. Dumbledore conjuring a whole ball of water. Dumbledore, fine example of really defending yourself, not harming someone else. Voldemort, quite the opposite, of course. He just goes straight to harm other people and attack. Great difference indeed between a white and a dark way of doing things, or also white and a dark way of performing magic. And then I took a few portions out of that battle between, the direct battle between Dumbledore and Voldemort. And I took this one and I gladly read it with you, because it again gives interesting elements in how you would deal with evil when you're in front of it. Let's see how it goes. So Voldemort said, "You do not seek to kill me, Dumbledore." Of course, Dumbledore has, as I said, he was quite in defensive mode. And Voldemort, well, he more liked to be under attack, apparently. "You do not seek to kill me, Dumbledore," called Voldemort. His scarlet eyes narrowed over the top of the shield. "Above such brutality are you?" "We both know that there are other ways of destroying a man, Tom," Dumbledore said calmly, continuing to walk towards Voldemort as though he had not a fear in the world, as though nothing had happened to interrupt his stroll up the hall. "Merely taking your life would not satisfy me, I admit." "There is nothing worse than death, Dumbledore," snarled Voldemort. "You are quite wrong," said Dumbledore, still closing in upon Voldemort and speaking as lightly as though they were discussing the matter over drinks. Harry felt scared to see him walking along, undefended, shieldless. He wanted to cry out a warning, but his headless guard kept shunting him backwards towards the wall, blocking his every attempt to get out from behind it. "Indeed, your failure to understand that there are things much worse than death has always been your greatest weakness." A very interesting quote, end of quote, by the way, very interesting quote. We see the calmness of Dumbledore. He seems not worried in any way, and he takes things just as they develop, and he's actually offering Voldemort again an opportunity to come to his senses and to make him see that indeed there are points that he is clearly missing, but Voldemort is not open to that, and that's why he snarled, "There is nothing worse than death." That's his only obsession, and all the rest is of no account. Very important. And then, of course, the pointing out that indeed is a weakness. Normally, Voldemort would not like that to be. He wants to be convinced of himself, of his own plan to come to immortality. And normally he should actually be worried, but he's not worried at all. He's very convinced that he's absolutely right, that immortality is the most important goal of all, regardless of all the rest. The scene goes along. Ultimately, Voldemort seems to have fled from the hall in the Ministry of Magic, but that's not really the case. And that's the moment when it becomes a bit dangerous also for Harry in some sense. Not really, but it gets the likes of it. And we read, "Sure it was over, the battle," it means. Sure it was over. Sure Voldemort had decided to flee. Harry made to run out from behind his statue guard, but Dumbledore bellowed, "Stay where you are, Harry!" For the first time, Dumbledore sounded frightened. Harry could not see why. The hall was quite empty but for themselves. The sobbing Bellatrix still trapped under the witch statue, and the baby Phoenix Fawkes croaking feebly on the floor. Then Harry's scar burst open, and he knew he was dead. It was pain beyond imagining, pain past endurance. He was gone from the hall. He was locked in the coils of a creature with red eyes, so tightly bound that Harry did not know where his body ended and the creature's began. They were fused together, bound by pain, and there was no escape. And when the creature spoke, it used Harry's mouth, so that in his agony he felt his jaw move. "Kill me now, Dumbledore." Blinded and dying, every part of him screaming for release, Harry felt the creature use him again. "If death is nothing, Dumbledore, kill the boy." Let the pain stop, thought Harry. Let him kill us. End it. Dumbledore, that is nothing compared to this. And I'll see Sirius again. And as Harry's heart filled with emotion, the creature's coils loosened. The pain was gone. Harry was lying face down on the floor, his glasses gone, shivering, as though he lay upon ice, not wood. A very profound and a very remarkable scene. We see how Harry and Voldemort's souls are trying to be fused. At least that's what Voldemort tries to do, but of course it causes for the both of them an undescribable pain. And that's what you get when you try to combine two things that cannot be combined together. It's either the one or the other. And the other, the love side, the white side, it wins. Harry feels as if from that pain there is no escape, but there is escape. Namely, when his heart is filled with emotion and he starts to think of Sirius. Sirius just was murdered. And so, of course, Harry has that profound, painful memory in his head. And actually, he doesn't mind being dead because he would see Sirius again. And again, it is love that saves Harry. Because when loves come into play, Voldemort cannot have it. He needs to go, and he immediately loosens the grip on Harry's soul. Love, again, is the antidote. What were they doing there in the Ministry of Magic? Well, They were actually looking for a prophecy. And now that prophecy is a very interesting one. Harry already had it from the divination professor, Professor Trelawney, a bit a wheezy kind of person, to be honest, but in the end, she gave him the prophecy in a strange voice, and that prophecy was also contained in a sphere of a glass sphere, a lightning glass sphere. And I just wanted to give that the text of that prophecy, because it is exactly as we have read it now in the quote of the final battle in the Ministry of Magic of the Order of the Phoenix. And the text of the prophecy goes as follows. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the seventh month dies, and the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not, and either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord will be born as the seventh month dies. End of quote. And all indications are in the sense that it is indeed Harry that the prophecy is talking about. But then there are, for Lord Voldemort, a certain number of worrying elements, and no wonder that he sends off his Death Eaters to go and collect that prophecy, because of course he wants to have it very clearly. He has marked him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not. And now that we come to read all of this, we know, of course, what this is all about, especially the power that the Dark Lord knows not. And it might have been the power that the Dark Lord does not wish to know about, because it is offered to him time and time again, but he doesn't want to know about it. Of course, when you have marked someone as your equal, then there are chances that you will be conquered by that individual in the end. And that's, of course, the greatest fear of Voldemort, that his plan of getting to true immortality is coming to an end. So we have set the scene here for the next year at Hogwarts, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. We get here introduced the theme again of flagellimancy, the theme again of the Horcruxes, but now plainly worked out in a number of aspects. We have again a new defense against the dark arts teacher, this time under the persona of Professor Slughorn, who is, let's say, a collector of important persons. He wants to surround himself by brilliant individuals, or individuals, pupils, students who have very famous family members, and of course, he wants to collect Harry as well. What he does not know is about the plan of Dumbledore to lay hands upon one of his memories. Yes, Slughorn was also a professor when Tom Riddle was a pupil at Hogwarts. And there must have been a conversation, so Dumbledore supposes there must have been a conversation, an important conversation on Horcruxes, and that's exactly what Dumbledore is after, and therefore he actually asks the help of Harry to lure Slughorn into a professorship at Hogwarts and in order to be there and lay the hands on that memory. This is also the book where we have actually a bit of a counter-hero in the person of Draco. Draco, which was one of the enemies, so to say, is the white-haired boy who is always against Harry. They're always antagonizing one another. But now Draco, who is obviously from a Slytherin family, Draco has been part of the Death Eaters. He has been marked with the specific mark, and he also was chosen for a particular mission at Hogwarts, for which he is busy the whole time. We get here a specific example of protection because Draco's mother will, at the start of the novel, go to Snape to ask for protection for her son Draco, to which Snape will voluntarily admit. He will cooperate to make what is called the unbreakable vow, the vow that cannot be broken. It's also very interesting to see what it is that Snape will be promising. He will not only promise to protect Draco, but he also promises, should Draco fail to accomplish the task which is set upon Draco, Snape would fulfill that task in his stead. And at this point in time, no one knows, not one reader, except when you have read all 7 novels, of course, but no one reader truly understand or can understand in what way this actually completely plays into the plan of Dumbledore. But we will see that in a moment. So I just wanted to read together the scene of Professor Slughorn talking with Tom Riddle about the subject of the Horcruxes. And it goes as follows. And this, by the way, is the untampered memory. Harry first gets a memory, but it has been tampered with, and it was Harry's job to get the untampered memory from Slughorn, and thanks to a small flask of Felix Felicis, he gets to that. Well, said Slughorn, not looking at Riddle, but fiddling with the ribbon on top of his box of crystallized pineapple. Well, it can't hurt to give you an overview, of course, just so that you understand the term. A Horcrux is the word used for an object in which a person has concealed part of their soul. I don't quite understand how that works, though, sir, said Riddle. His voice was carefully controlled, but Harry could sense his excitement. Well, you split your soul, you see, said Slughorn, and hide part of it in an object outside the body. Then, even if one's body is attacked or destroyed, one cannot die, for part of the soul remains earthbound and undamaged, but of course, existence in such a form. Slughorn's face crumbled, and Harry found himself remembering the words he had heard nearly 2 years before. I was ripped from my body. I was less than spirit, less than the meanest ghost, but still I was alive. Few would want it, Tom, very few. Death would be preferable. But Riddle's hunger was now apparent. His expression was greedy. He could no longer hide his longing. How do you split your soul? Well, said Slughorn uncomfortably, You must understand that the soul is supposed to remain intact and whole. Splitting it is an act of violation. It is against nature. But how do you do it? By an act of evil, the supreme act of evil. By committing murder. Killing rips the soul apart. The wizard, intent upon creating a Horcrux, would use the damage to his advantage. He would encase the torn portion. End of quote. And so here we see the very sorrowful mechanics of the Horcruxes and the mechanics of protection in the way the dark world envisions it. By committing murder, you rip your soul apart, something quite against nature. You commit an act of violation, violence, and in the end, it's not about saving others, but it's actually about saving yourself to the detriment of others. That's the mechanics, the economy of the dark side. Another interesting quote are again from conversations between Dumbledore and Harry, and again on the theme of protection. And in fact, it is one of the last conversations that Dumbledore will have with Harry in book 6, as it is, the Half-Blood Prince, because then later on, after this conversation, Dumbledore will take Harry onto a mission to find another Horcrux and try to destroy it. And Dumbledore has actually already explained to Harry that he already found another Horcrux. They also discussed the diary, which was a Horcrux, which is already disarmed. And then Dumbledore talks about a certain ring that pertained to a grandfather of Tom Riddle that appeared also to be a Horcrux, and Dumbledore has dealt with that. Because of it, his hand withers, and actually it is a curse which is very slightly killing Dumbledore. So at the moment of the Half-Blood Prince, Dumbledore's days are counted, and that's one of the reasons why, of course, he now in this book has given so much information in order to arm Harry so that he would be able also to protect himself when the time comes that all other means of protections wear out. And so Dumbledore explains part of the mechanics of that kind of protection that he's offering you. It is essential, says Dumbledore. It is essential that you understand this, said Dumbledore, standing up and striding about the room, his glittering robe swooshing in his wake. Harry had never seen him so agitated. By attempting to kill you, Voldemort himself singled out the remarkable person who sits here in front of me and gave him the tools for the job. It is Voldemort's fault that you were able to see into his thoughts, his ambitions, that you even understand the snake-like language in which he gives orders. And yet, Harry, despite your privileged insight into Voldemort's world, which incidentally is a gift any Death Eater would kill to have, you have never been seduced by the dark arts, never, even for a second, shown the slightest desire to become one of Voldemort's followers. Of course I haven't, said Harry indignantly. He killed my mum and dad. And then a bit further. You are protected, in short, By your ability to love, said Dumbledore loudly. The only protection that can possibly work against the lure of power like Voldemort's. In spite of all the temptation you have endured, all the suffering, you remain pure of heart, just as pure as you were at the age of 11, when you stared into a mirror that reflected your heart's desire, and it showed you only the way to thwart Lord Voldemort, and not immortality or riches. Harry, have you any idea how few wizards could have seen what you saw in that mirror? Voldemort should have known then what he was dealing with, but he did not. But it knows it now. You have flitted into Lord Voldemort's mind without damage to yourself, but he cannot possess you without enduring mortal agony, as he discovered in the ministry. I do not think he understands why, Harry, but he was in such a hurry to mutilate his own soul, he never paused to understand the incomparable power of a soul that is untarnished and whole. End of quote. And here we have it all spitted out again. It is Harry's capacity to love, and also Harry's capacity to just remain Harry and to not go into one or other arrogant trip around himself. And he could have so much reason to do that, but he does not. He just stays loyal to himself, loyal to the values for which he stands, out of sheer love for his family, for his parents, and as we will see also, and more specifically, more especially, for his mother. We are, as Harry is, ready for the final book, The Deathly Hallows. And that indeed is quite a dark novel. The Half-Blood Prince, the movie, it was made, and it really is a very dark movie. Also, the imagery is quite dark. And the same goes for the Deathly Hallows. Specifically the first movie, because they made 2 out of them. The first movie is a very dark thing. You hardly see anything in the movie. That's why for some point in time I have refused to buy it, because you cannot see a thing. But anyway, the Deathly Hallows, very important elements in this book. And there it starts with the will of Albus Dumbledore. Dumbledore died on the astronomy tower at the end of the Half-Blood Prince. It was a pre-arranged death process. It was arranged for Snape to make it so. There was an agreement between Dumbledore and Snape. That's a very important element. Actually, Voldemort had intended to give the mission to Draco, who failed to accomplish it. And so, as we know, that Snape made the unbreakable vow with Draco's mother, Narcissa Malfoy, he had to finish off the task, and that was actually also, as was arranged, separately. Draco did not know, none of the Death Eaters or Voldemort knew about that, but that was also what was agreed between Dumbledore and Snape, as we will see in a moment. Dumbledore's will, he gives the Deluminator. It's a device that can suck up or give light, but it does many other things more. He gives a small book with tales, child's tales of the wizarding world to Hermione, the tales of Beetle the Bard, and he gives the golden snitch, the one that he catched in his very first Quidditch match in the first year. He gives the golden snitch, leaves the golden snitch to Harry. Harry will be busy with that snitch for the entire novel, and in the end, of course, he will find out how to open it. It has marked, engraved in it, I open at the close. He's busy with it for the entire novel. He shouldn't have, because it opened at the close, but anyway. The novel is, that we should admit, it is composed of two parts, and the turning point is actually chapter 19, the Silver Doe. It is the chapter where another Horcrux, a locket, will be destroyed. It will be destroyed by Ron, who in a crisis has run away and who regains his friend. So that will also be the moment when the friendship of the three friends will be mended. Very beautiful scene. Meanwhile, of course, they have in Hogwarts, by the way, Harry, Hermione, and Ron will not be at Hogwarts. They will be on the run, because actually Voldemort has taken over the Ministry of Magic. So they are on the run. They are being searched for. There's a serious warrant on their head, and all the Death Eaters everywhere, they are looking for him. So they have to go in hiding. And as they are doing that, at Hogwarts, there is some remaining members of their little group of friends that was formed in the Order of the Phoenix, Dumbledore's army, and they still continue to have their secret meetings, because meanwhile, as a defense against the dark arts teachers, they have Amicus, a Death Eater, and they are actually not learning defense against the dark arts, but plainly the dark arts at school. One very important element in this book is the prince's tale. And that's when all of the thematic lines come together, and it, of course, contains one of the biggest surprises of the whole series of novels. Because we will learn who Professor Severus Snape really was. Severus Snape has always been loathed by Harry, and the feeling was actually and severely mutual. Why? Because Harry looked so much as his father, and Severus Snape and James Potter were rivals during their school time. That, of course, Harry learns during the previous novels. But Harry does not only have the striking appearance of his father. Harry has also his mother's eyes. Now, that's a very interesting thing. We see the scene of Severus Snape dying. He has run away. They have fled, of course. The whole of Hogwarts castles is one huge battlefield. There's people fighting everywhere. The castle is heavily damaged, and a number of Death Eaters and Snape, they flee. They flee also part because of the wrath of Lord Voldemort, who sees things are not going the way he had expected or he would want them to go. And he goes away. He's somewhere on the grounds, and the Dark Lord, he follows him to finish him off. And just before he dies, so he got a curse that does not kill him immediately. Just before he dies, Harry goes to Snape. He's there panting, there in that shed where he is, and he just wants Harry to take up, not only in a small flask, not only to take up the tears, but also this very specific substance, which is called liquid nor gas. And then Harry recognizes it, and he sees that They are the most important memories of Severus Snape. So I just gave you the scene. The whole castle is torn into pieces. Everybody is fighting everybody. That's the circumstance, and Harry collects those very precious last memories of Professor Snape, the one who he has always loathed. And just before he gives his final breath, Severus Snape says to Harry, "Look at me." Very strange to ask that to someone who you have disliked so much. So Harry he feels it in his bones, of course, that he has something very important. And he also understands that despite the circumstance, he has to regain Hogwarts Castle and go to the headmaster's room, to the Pensieve. That's, of course, quite an undertaking, but he succeeds. He throws the memories of Snape into the Pensieve. He dives into it. And so he dives into the world of Snape. And we get to see the world from a totally different angle. And yes, of course, Snape was part of the Death Eaters. He had the Dark Mark. He had all of that. But it has always been a question which side he really was on. Was he actually, because he really had the trust of Dumbledore. Dumbledore had no doubt whatsoever. But what gave him that unwavering trust in Snape? Knowing that he was part of the Death Eaters. We get to know it in The Prince's Tale. And we will see it on basis of what will probably be the last quotes that we will be working through. And Dumbledore says, "Her son lives. He has her eyes, precisely her eyes. You remember the shape and color of Lily Evans's eyes, I'm sure." "Don't!" bellowed Snape. "Gone. Dead. Is this remorse, Severus? I wish I were dead." "And what use would that be to anyone?" said Dumbledore coldly. "If you loved Lily Evans, if you truly loved her, then your way forward is clear." Snape seemed to peer through a haze of pain, and Dumbledore's words appeared to take a long time to reach him. What do you mean?" "You know how and why she died. Make sure it was not in vain. Help me protect Lily's son." "He does not need protection. The Dark Lord has gone. The Dark Lord will return. And Harry Potter will be in terrible danger when he does." There was a long pause, and slowly Snape regained control of himself, mastered his own breathing. At last he said, "Very well, very well. But never tell Dumbledore. This must be between us. Swear it. I cannot bear, especially Potter's son. I want your word." "My word, Severus, that I shall never reveal the best of you." Dumbledore sighed, looking down into Snape's ferocious, anguished face. "If you insist." And so there you have it. Again, love. And we are here at a very important moment. We are quite early in the story. Lily and James Potter have just been killed. Harry has just been saved. And we get to know there were a number of previous memories of Severus Snape as a young boy and Lily Evans as a young girl, and talking, of course, about being a wizard and he recognizing her as a witch, etc., etc. And there develops a very fine friendship and a very fine love, actually, except Snape is not maybe the most gifted to bring that love out. He's actually sorted into Slytherin house. Lily is sorted into Gryffindor house together with James Potter, and so clearly her way goes into another direction. But love is love, and in this case, we are here at the moment that the contract of love is signed, the contract of the hidden love, which I would like to define as the third seal of protection for Harry Potter. And in fact, we will see, because of course we will see a number of memories of Snape, and one of them, and then we are already a bit further, we must be somewhere in the Half-Blood Prince, somewhere in that period, where Dumbledore is also speaking with Snape on how things go in connection to Harry, and they are probably also, they have discussed the Horcruxes among them and the entire plan of Voldemort to have several of them, and also the fact that Harry is in fact the chosen one. If there's one who would be capable of finishing off Voldemort, then it should be Harry, if a number of elements are in place. But Harry has clearly that mission, that Messianic mission we talked about earlier. And so Dumbledore is talking to Snape about what he has to do, and he explains. So Snape asks, but what must he do? And Dumbledore says, that is between Harry and me. Now listen closely, Severus. There will come a time after my death. Do not argue, do not interrupt. There will come a time when Lord Voldemort will seem to fear for the life of his snake. For Nagini? Snape looked astonished. Precisely. If there comes a time when Lord Voldemort stops sending that snake forth to do his bidding, but keeps it safe beside him under magical protection, then I think it will be safe to tell Harry. Tell him what? Dumbledore took a deep breath and closed his eyes. Tell him that on the night Lord Voldemort tried to kill him, when Lily cast her own life between them as a shield, the killing curse rebounded upon Lord Voldemort, and a fragment of Lord Voldemort's soul was blasted apart from the whole and latched itself onto the only living soul left in that collapsing building. Part of Lord Voldemort lives inside Harry, and it is that which gives him the power of speech with snakes and a connection with Lord Voldemort's mind that he has never understood. And while that fragment of soul, unmissed by Voldemort, remains attached to and protected by Harry, Lord Voldemort cannot die. Harry seemed to be watching the two men from one end of a long tunnel. They were so far away from him, their voices echoing strangely in his ears. So the boy must die? Asked Snape quite calmly. and Voldemort himself must do it, Severus. That is essential. Another long silence. Then Snape said, I thought all these years that we were protecting him for her, for Lily. We have protected him because it has been essential to teach him, to raise him, to let him try his strength, said Dumbledore, his eyes still tight shut. Meanwhile, the connection between them grows ever stronger, a parasitic growth. Sometimes I have thought he suspects it himself. If I know him, he will have arranged matters so that when he set out to meet his death, it will truly mean the end of Voldemort. Dumbledore opened his eyes. Snape looked horrified. You have kept him alive so that he can die at the right moment? Don't be shocked, Severus. How many men and women have you watched die? Lately only those whom I could not save, said Snape. He stood up. You have used me. Meaning? I have spied for you and lied for you, put myself in mortal danger for you. Everything was supposed to be to keep Lily Potter's son safe. Now you tell me you have been raising him like a pig for slaughter. But this is touching, Severus, said Dumbledore seriously. Have you grown to care for the boy after all? For him? Shouted Snape. Expecto Patronum. From the tip of his wand burst the silver doe. She landed on the office floor, bounded across the office, and soared out of the window. Dumbledore watched her fly away, and as her silvery glow faded, he turned back to Snape, and his eyes were full of tears. After all this time, always, said Snape. End of quote. And so with all of that knowledge in his mind and heart, Harry can set out for what we will then know as not the ultimate battle, but the penultimate battle. Harry, who is sacrificing himself to be killed off by Lord Voldemort. And he goes there willingly, he goes there as a lamb. He's not charging, he's not counter-cursing, not anything. He knows what he has to do, he understands he is the seventh Horcrux. And he knows he has to die. And not knowing what will wait after the veil for him, he goes. He goes, and in some weird way, because he has had several trips around Hogwarts Castle completely in a battlefield, completely torn apart. So it's the ideal circumstance to lose, for instance, a golden snitch, but in some weird way, he still has the snitch with him. And that snitch opens at the close, as it is engraved on it. And he gets some kind of a number of people coming out of it, a number of souls coming out of it, his mother, his father, Lupin, who has meanwhile died, his godfather, Sirius Black, who has meanwhile died, and other people who have died They are all there around him. And as Harry says, "You'll stay with me," they say, of course, until the very end. An intangible and yet very real support of our hero. Then we get, of course, the very interesting scene because, well, we can imagine what happened. We can imagine what happened. Harry dies, but no, he doesn't die. They both are terminated in a way. They are both unconsciously out of that attack from Voldemort. So Harry and Voldemort, they lose consciousness. And we get the famous chapter of King's Cross. And there, Harry meets Dumbledore again. Harry meets Dumbledore, and they have a number of conversations of which I could only take one small portion, but I think an important portion for our theme of protection. And so Dumbledore explains, "You were the seventh Horcrux, Harry. The Horcrux he never meant to make. He had rendered his soul so unstable that it broke apart when he committed those acts of unspeakable evil. The murder of your parents, the attempted killing of a child. But what escaped from that room was even less than he knew. He left more than his body behind. He left part of himself latched to you. He would be victim who had survived. And his knowledge remained woefully incomplete, Harry. That which Voldemort does not value, he takes no trouble to comprehend. Of house elves and children's tales, of love, loyalty and innocence, Voldemort knows and understands nothing. Nothing. That they all have a power beyond his own, a power beyond the reach of any magic, is a truth he has never grasped. He took your blood believing it would strengthen him. He took into his body a tiny part of the enchantment your mother laid upon you when she died for you. His body keeps her sacrifice alive. And while that enchantment survives, so do you, and so does Voldemort's one last hope for himself. And here we see again, very nicely worked out, the theme of the mother's love, and more importantly, the blood that was taken from Harry forcibly. Harry was totally immobilized. We recall the scene at the graveyard, the end of the Goblet of Fire, and one of the elements with which the body of Lord Voldemort was revived was the blood forcibly taken from the enemy. But with that came, of course, the enchantment of Lily Evans trying to protect her son. And with that, actually, Voldemort had also incorporated a portion of her love. Not that it mattered much, because, in fact, he does not take the trouble to comprehend the true value of all the things like child's tales, house elves, etc. Love, loyalty, and innocence. Purity of heart. It's all alien to Lord Voldemort out of his own decision. He decides not to go that way. We all know the final battle, of course, and it was set in scene very interestingly. And we also know how it ends. Again, a juicy thing for a filmmaker to show and to present the disintegration of Voldemort, who finally dies. And with that comes, of course, an end to all the violence, the hatred, the jealousy, the arrogance, everything that Lord Voldemort stood for. And I hope that with all of this, I was able to give a small inkling of the triple seal of protection as it is to be found in the 7 novels of Harry Potter: the mother's love, the master's care, and the hidden love. I thank you all for watching it to the end. I am sorry if I made any mistakes of quotation or expression, pronunciation, and well, maybe we see each other back another time. Thank you.